Is Vincent Kompany the missing piece to return Bayern to the top? Or is he just a temporary appointment until Bayern can convince other top managers who are committed to other top teams at the moment? Did Bayern see something in Kompany and his philosophy that can return them to both domestic and European glory? When Bayern Munich hired Vincent Kompany, there was a certain relief in Bayern that they had closed a turbulent chapter in their history which saw them lose out on their first Bundesliga for 11 years. Bayer Leverkusen strolled to the top of the Bundesliga table while Bayern sank further in their mayhem, which began when they sacked Julian Nagelsmann in March 2023 when he was on a skiing holiday. It was an infamous dismissal, with the board claiming they took that decision because they wanted to increase Bayern's chance of winning the Champions League and the Bundesliga. Their decision to hire Thomas Tuchel, who was on a sabbatical at the time, seemed like a masterstroke. Well, it certainly didn't seem to turn out that way. In fact, there was nothing masterful about it. Bayern were eliminated from the 22-23 Champions League and only narrowly won the league due to the shocking collapse from Borussia Dortmund on the final day of the season. Bayern winning the Bundesliga actually sent them deeper into problems, as they then sacked CEO Oliver Kahn and sporting director Hassan Salihamidzic, who Julian Nagelsmann fell out with during his final weeks at Bayern. Tuchel then had the kind of powers he found distracting when he was at Chelsea. The manager pushed for the signing of Harry Kane, among other players, including DM João Paulinho from Fulham, and the manager didn't have faith in Joshua Kimmich as a midfielder. Paulinho didn't come, but Harry Kane did come and was a success. Unfortunately, his bevy of goals couldn't save Bayern from ending the season trophyless and third on the table. Due to their inconsistency, Bayern's board announced their decision to part ways with Tuchel 3 months from the end of the season and began their search for a new manager. One of the allegations against Tuchel was that he was too focused on signings rather than coaching, and the president claimed Tuchel couldn't improve the players. Bayern then began their journey to find a replacement, and their attempts to get a new coach looked straight out of a soap opera. They toyed with the idea of getting Nagelsmann back, especially since the board members who he had the problems with had since been sacked, but he decided to renew with Germany, and then Bayern's excursion began. They next considered Roberto De Zerbi after his impressive couple of years in charge of Brighton. However, that move didn't materialise. Then Bayern's board flirted with the idea of Unai Emery and wanted to begin conversations with him, but the Spaniard received a new contract from Aston Villa as he neared a Champions League spot. Then came a familiar figure who Bayern felt would be tempted, the high-flying Stuttgart coach, Sebastian Hoeneß. Unfortunately, taking Stuttgart to the Champions League earned him a fresh deal just as Bayern glanced in his direction. So they had to look away, and then they zeroed in on former Manchester United flop Ralf Rangnick. Rangnick was tempted, but ultimately decided to further commit himself to the Austrian national team. Speaking of Austria, Bayern turned to Austrian tactician Oliver Glasner next, but Crystal Palace told them that they would have to pay €100 million to get him from Selhurst Park. Glasner had an electric start to being Crystal Palace's manager, and Palace would prefer to keep it that way. However, Bayern did get someone from Palace eventually, but we'll get onto that fully in a bit. After the Glasner pursuit ended in an epic fail, Bayern then went back to discuss with Tuchel. The team was in high spirits, but unfortunately, despite coming close to agreeing with Tuchel, he still decided he wanted to leave. And so then Bayern turned their sights to Vincent Kompany. And the big question is, why? At the time, Kompany had led Burnley to relegation just one season after getting them up to the Premier League with promotion. Now, this was his biggest job so far in his career. Before Burnley, Kompany had begun working at his boyhood club Anderlecht in 2020 as a player manager. Kompany began as a full manager in the second season and led the team to third and to the Belgian Cup final. Relegated Burnley came in 2022 and offered him a job which he promptly took. Not many people were a fan of him when he was at Anderlecht. Kompany faced criticisms for how he played. He favoured an attacking style of play which some felt wasn't practical. Former Ajax coach Ad de Mos criticised Kompany, saying Kompany wants to do the same thing as Guardiola in City, and that makes me sick. However, Kompany stuck to his guns. The Belgian tactician did the same thing Guardiola did at Burnley, and it proved that it was a success and they were right to approach him. He led the team to overhaul their squad and implemented his possession-based attacking style. In Kompany's first game in charge, Burnley completed 301 first-half passes. This was a stat Burnley only surpassed twice in 90 minutes during the whole of the 21-22 season. But Burnley weren't just passing the ball around without purpose. They passed with the intention to create chances, and they were ruthless going forward. Their defence also wasn't left behind, as they conceded the fewest goals. In the end, Kompany led Burnley to finish the championship with 101 points, becoming the first team to do so in 9 years. Burnley were then promoted to the Premier League because Kompany chose to be rigid with his ideals. For Kompany, it was attacking style or nothing, and, as he would find out, he couldn't afford to be rigid. Still, did he change his philosophy? No. When Burnley played their first game against City, they were crushed. And then the misery went on and on as they played against other teams. Burnley just couldn't seem to do anything right. It didn't help that their team seemed relatively new, with some key players who were part of the championship domination not present. For example, key to how they played in the championship were left-back Ian Maatsen, centre-back Taylor Harwood-Bellis and forward Nathan Tella, who scored 17 goals in 39 championship matches. Apart from this, their new signings too weren't doing so well, and Burnley's decision to target young players with potential looked like a horrible mistake, as the pressure of the Premier League swallowed those players. Among them was goalkeeper Trafford, who had a low save percentage. In front of Trafford was a defence that allowed opponents to have an average of 16 shots a game. As if this wasn't enough, the players had been making mistake after mistake. Burnley made 8 errors leading to shots, and 4 of these errors resulted in a goal. The absence of Harwood-Bellis, who was key in their championship charge but returned to his parent club, and Jordan Bayer was missing for some crucial games. For them, this just piled on their misery. The famous phrase goes, attack wins you games, defence wins you titles, as Sir Alex Ferguson said, and he couldn't be more right. Burnley were effective at both ends of the pitch during their promotion campaign in the Championship, but as soon as they were promoted to the Prem, their attack also began to falter just like their defence. They just couldn't score. Against Crystal Palace in the 23-24 season, Burnley created more than enough chances to win the game. They had 17 shots to Palace's 4, but somehow still ended up on the wrong side of a 2-0 scoreline. So how come Burnley turned out this way, despite Kompany getting support in the transfer market at the beginning of the 23-24 season? The simple answer? Youth. Kompany was hailed as a teacher, and so Burnley, like some other clubs, focused on signing young players who they hoped would evolve over time under Kompany's leadership. It was a sound idea, but there were 2 key components that Kompany didn't count on. He didn't consider the possibility that the players wouldn't immediately adapt, and he also didn't try to adapt himself to the squad he had. It was the Anderlecht problem all over again. Kompany stuck with his attacking philosophies, and when Burnley got relegated, he didn't believe it was because of his philosophy. And this is precisely why he is a great signing for Bayern Munich. Players like Musiala, Kane, Olise, Sane, Davies, they'll all benefit hugely from this style of play and will be very excited to get started. I mean, the Bayern squad is built for this. Bayern will give Kompany the opportunity to fully be the type of coach he wants to be. At Burnley, despite their position on the league table in the 23-24 season, only City, Brighton, Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal, Tottenham, Newcastle, Manchester United and Aston Villa had more passes than Burnley. Kompany rarely let his team try long balls, but instead focused on passes and keeping possession. And this is something Bayern are already famously good at, and Kompany can only make it better. Now, while under Tuchel, Bayern had the highest average possession figures in the league with about 59%. However, despite this, Bayern created mostly with transitions. Now, this will be different under Kompany, who will want to dominate possession, But rather than rely on transitions, his system will be based on patient sequences of play which will hurt opposition defences and create chances. This time around, those chances will get buried, as Kompany will have the lethal striker that is Harry Kane. Now, Kane loves to drop deep and drag defenders out to pass in behind to wingers. Bayern have gone on to sign Michael Olise on the wing, who can receive the ball in behind and also create for Kane. Apart from that, Olise himself can score and can be the Ribery reborn for Bayern. Apart from Olise, Bayern have also fixed the midfield problem Tuchel identified. They have signed João Paulinho as a defensive midfielder, which will add dynamism to their play. It isn't only the new transfers that will be key for Kompany, though. The existing players Bayern have before the new additions can also translate Kompany's system on the pitch. They're already used to pressing, among other things, and Kompany has a reputation as a tutor, which can ease the process. While his ability to get young talents and nurture them worked against him at Burnley, it will surely serve him well at Bayern. Tuchel was criticised for his inability to nurture, while Kompany has shown himself to be quite the opposite. Irrespective of his ability to teach, the player experience at Bayern will serve Kompany. At Burnley, the average age last season was 24.6, while at Bayern, it's 30.5. Now, we're not saying that Kompany at Bayern isn't a risk. In fact, it is a risk. But he could be to them what Xabi Alonso is to Bayer Leverkusen. However, he would need time to implement his style. But will he get that time?